Hello. Hope you can all hear me. I'm Pip Stone. I'm Training Strategy and Development Manager for Eurostar, and I look after all of our engineers who maintain our trains. Long job title, essentially, general dog's body. So in terms of background for us, so we operate both a rolling stock function and an operations function, so for operations colleagues as well. And previously we had a whole vast of different CMSs, LMSs and things in place. I inherited essentially 10 spreadsheets, and I think we were on a previous CMS before as well. But what we needed and what our senior manager requested was one single solution which will fit both needs. I'm sure most of you are probably operations based, as you can appreciate. We are completely different functions in the way we operate. But yeah, having a single solution in place was a requirement. We also needed to make sure that it was EU compliant for our drivers. And it needed to be an off-the-shelf solution. So when I came into my role, being a systems and integration engineer, part of my degree, I created this huge matrix of what I wanted as an ideal system. We took that out of the tender, and that was hellishly expensive, as it comes with a lot of risk. So what we did is we were looking around and we found we needed a low risk solution, which AssessTech is what they provided. We also wanted something holistic. So although I only look after engineering and rolling stock, when we looked through the modules which are available from AssessTech, it was a case of I can have other solutions for other departments, not only my own. So we've got assessment, which we both use, the incident module that we use in rolling stock, licensing module, again, that operations use. Bulletin that we heavily use within rolling stock. Again, it's not a training function, but it's something our HSQE team utilise every day. Our check module, we don't necessarily use it for fitness for duty, and I'll go on to that later on. And AssessBook that we've also heavily sort of loaded stuff into, but haven't used it yet. And forms is, of course, a conversation I have to have with Sally. As it's coming up to contract time, which is always good. But essentially we took, in terms of a game of poker, we went all in and we took everything we could, which was available at the time. The only thing we do have is, as I'm sure you guys are used to, you operate on a schedule, a 1 year or a 3 year schedule or cycle, and you have different events and training requirements that feed into that. Rolling stock is very different, where we have periodicities. So we will have one major core assessment at the start, and that will last for 2 to 3 years. So we don't have these scheduled events, which means we don't use things like the CMS event widgets and all the other capabilities that are built into the system. But it's essentially, it's all based on competency usage. So although we do one big core assessment at the start, we then need to monitor to make sure that our engineers are using the systems or using the competencies that they've got regularly enough to maintain their competence. It's enforced by in-process checks, so we will carry out every 3 months, we do an in-process check on all of our staff to make sure that they are compliant with whatever competency they've got. And then we have to update that with regular updates, and this is what we do in terms of bulletins. However, this is what we currently do in terms of a big, huge super cycle, which can be a bit messy. So with the black arrows we've got there, so this is our assessment cycle, essentially. So we have an initial assessment, and then we'll have competency usage, which comes from our computerized maintenance management system. And that's all a case of, let's take a doors assessment. They've had doors assessments, and they are regularly using that doors competency to maintain their skill set. That's a complete process, and that's done we do that every 6 months within a 3 year cycle. We then look at continuous training. So this is something that I want to introduce, and this is something that we'll be using AssessBook for. So when someone, take the doors example again, they've had doors training right at the start. At the moment, that's all they get. They get a big 2 week course on doors, and then there's nothing that follows on. But what we want to introduce for that is to have a complete cycle of training. So all of our modules are built, and they will just do a doors module every 3 months again. And it will break it down to exterior doors, interior doors, steps, or any of the integration you've got. So learning becomes a continuous cycle again, and that improves your output. In process checks, so as I mentioned, we do in process checks every 3 months, and that's just to make sure that people are compliant. and updates is what we do throughout the Bulletin Module. So all of these modules are now integrated in AssessTech, or they're all in AssessTech. But if we can merge them all together, we've got this huge, powerful super cycle, essentially, where all of our 4 cycles that we've currently got in place are all merged into one big competency package. And it's the only way, I get audited on a regular basis, it's the only way I can demonstrate that we are keeping on top of competencies holistically. So if we can do this, this would be really good. Just one for you.
We're on it.
So it's a complete assessment process. So this is another thing we're working on. So although we are able to capture huge amounts of information and data within AssessTech, we have to use other systems in place. So one of the big benefits we've had is using the developmental side of it. So the red, amber, green, double green, which is really good for capturing where there are issues or where there's improvement plans required. But I currently don't have anywhere where I can store that information. So we gather all this information, there's improvements required here, there's improvements required there, but then I've got to manage that on an exterior system, so I don't have anywhere to put that information. We need a way that we can suspend or withdraw competencies. So if I have someone who hasn't done a doors task for 6 months, then we will suspend their competency until we've had an intervention, and then we can reintroduce it. Likewise, if they go long-term sick or they're away on sabbatical or just generally away from the business, again, we need a way to withdraw or suspend their competencies. At the moment, we just delete it from the role resource tab that we have.
And you're using the configurable resources
to do that, yeah.
competency.
Managing personal improvement requirements. So as part of the process and the data we get out of this, there is huge amounts of improvement that we can give to our engineers. It's just a case of having somewhere we can capture that. And hierarchical competency management. Now, this is something I will say I'm fresh to training. I was an engineer beforehand and then came up to training for 2 weeks and never went back. So I'd say the accidental training manager. But hierarchical competency management is around, we have lots of competencies which integrate with each other. And if you lose one competency, the theory is that you lose the other competencies. Our main one for this is if your medical expires. Ultimate medical fitness is the foundation of any competency. So if your medical does expire, that should wipe out or suspend or withdraw your competencies until your medical has been renewed. And then we have, a whole host of competencies that are built on each other to make sure that they are done. And this is all going to be done, hopefully, as me and Hannah discuss on a weekly basis within the additional role resource tabs, which essentially is like the incapacity tab. Just would be configurable, and you can have some more information where you can store information and you've got a closure loop to make sure they have been completed. Ooh, I'll show you that later. Everyone likes that slide. So I came into my role real data poor originally, and what we've been able to gain with AssessTech is we are now data rich. I've got data everywhere. As you all know, data is key. If anyone gets audited, they all want to see your hard data. We've now got a single source of truth option. So previously, as I said, we were on 10 spreadsheets, which was a huge mess, and we had data in archives, we had data in paper, and it was a real mess. However, we now, that's probably gone up, we extract 33,000 rows of data from the system every day, but there is manual interfaces and requirement between other data sources. The biggest problem we found is the limited visibility. So I think everyone's mentioned, yes, there's multiple clicks, there's data stored everywhere. So it's just a case of how can we pull all that information from a team leader's perspective or a driver manager's perspective to have an overview of everything that's going through. So we currently do this, and I'll go on to these slides later. We do this with Power BI. How ironic. But I know we are working on some user interfaces as well. So this is, everyone got excited when I showed this slide before. So this is what we currently have, and I can assure you this looks a lot better now than it did when I took this screenshot. So this is what we've done with our resource tab. So we use Power BI heavily within the business, and this essentially shows us all of our configurable resources or publications and event or equipment. And it extracts all that information and puts it into a nice deliverable KPIs. So I can use this. This is our competency one, and I can see where we are in terms of expired competencies, how many competencies we've got expiring within the next, in month by month, and our configuration of competency percentage per competency. So I will say a lot of our guys, and it has how it's spread out. We don't have one big core competency. We will have, up to 18 competencies that one person manages. From a team leader's perspective, this is another system that we've introduced within the depot for a team leader view to see all of their competencies and whether they have expired, whether they expire in 3 months' time, or whether they are currently in date. And it just gives them a big matrix which they can view quickly, I would say, is the most important thing. And it gives them a bigger overview of what's going on. Bulletin. So I don't personally use Bulletin, but our HSQE team heavily uses Bulletin, and it's something that I think we've heavily used over the last sort of 18 months that we've been using the system. So it's our established way of briefing and sending out notices. And the key benefits for this is electronic sign-off. So this was a big thing for us. We had paper record sheets everywhere for quality briefs, safety briefs, technical briefs, training briefs. All the briefs that we would have, there was a paper sign-off as well. And that doesn't capture people who are just not on shift that day, or they're sick, or they're away from the business. And then when they come back, 9 times out of 10, they won't receive that brief because the team needs forgotten about it. It gives us real-time feedback. So if someone says no, there's the comment option, and we can go back and we can update our brief, so we can make sure that we've gone and spoken to that person to make sure they are aware of what it means. And it's really, especially with lockdown, it's improved our communication capability. It's the one way that we've been able to communicate en masse to everyone quickly to give them updates on what are our COVID measures in place. What are the risks that we're seeing? What do you need to do when you return back to work? If you've been on furlough, what does the welcome back to work package look like? And it's been really helpful for us. Like I said, we have been a heavy user of it. We've only used it for 18 months and sent out 131 bulletins, which is 24,000 plus individual bulletins that, without this, we wouldn't have been able to manage this. And quite successfully, given the fact that no one really likes technology when they're in engineering. We're quite old school. We do have a 91% read rate, which we've had great success with. I think someone mentioned earlier around data capture for bulletins. So this is what we do. Again, these are our Power BI slides, and we break this down into how many bulletins have been released and who has been reading all their bulletins. We're glad to see I'm right at the top there, 100% read rate. But we also break it down per team, so we know where we need to focus our efforts on, and what our overall sort of read rate is throughout the teams. And all of this information is, we can extract information, we can manipulate it, we can deep dive into teams and see, is there particular people that we need to focus on? And this is something that we do this on a weekly basis just to keep it going. The check module. So the check module is designed for fitness for duty checks. I remember sitting down with Brock when we started the engagement. I thought, we don't want to do fitness for duty, but I can use checks for in-process checks or any other scheduled check that we want to make. So we have repurposed the check module. Some improvements to be made, but we are going to start using it for daily due diligence, which again brings in its own aspect, because a check in the current system is always live. You don't have a daily update or a daily reschedule of a check. We want to use it for in-process checks, end-of-process checks, periodical technical checks and reviews, and then our leadership reviews as well. So at the moment, we capture, again, all this information is all on paper, and I'm a big advocate, as well as I'm sure you all, for removing all this paper and then being able to extract all the information via reports. It just makes it much easier. So we want to have support of things like automatic scheduling of checks. This is the daily due diligence option. But also, if we know we need to do an in-process check every 3 months, can we get the system to automatically schedule these events every 3 months? We need to improve the reporting capabilities. At the moment, I think the data goes into another area of the system, so it's a bit tricky to extract that information out. And then the check data capabilities that we've got. So currently it's a yes, no option, or you can add text, or there's other options out there. What we don't have is a yes, no, and then a commentary. Essentially what we do on ASS, we would like to have over into the check module as well, just so we can have some more information. And then the improved planning capabilities. So can we get these things to reschedule? Can we get it to automatically do it? AssessBook. So although we have taken AssessBook, I'm sure this is a graph you're all pretty familiar with, engineers are very keen on sitting in a classroom and going through wads of paper for all of our training that we deliver. I don't like that, because as soon as they've done the training, you know, all that information, all those folders of course notes go into the bottom of their locker and just bring their safety boots a bit higher up. So what we want to do is we want to encourage or introduce AssessBook, so we can have pre-learning, so pre-e-learning. We'll then have some form of trainer-led intervention, and then there'll be post-learning every 3 months. So it just keeps that cycle going. Because what we see at the moment is we have a big, steep knowledge gain, and then as soon as the course is finished, it's, oh, what else have I got to worry about? And all that information is lost. They'll hold on to some key information, but all the peripheral stuff they will lose. And by doing this, we gain a knowledge increase, and I also am able to have my training courses improved in their delivery. Because normally day one, as I'm sure it's for everyone, is around the geography of the train and how the systems integrate and what they're called and all the acronyms. Now, if I can push all that information onto AssessBook, they've done their pre-learning, they come into the training room, they've got a bit of an understanding of what's going on, that knowledge gain is higher, and then we can maintain that knowledge gain throughout post-learning as well. Ongoing development. So, as always, we are a tricky customer. I think Eurostar in general is a tricky customer, but rolling stock specifically. And collectively, we knew this when we started the process and we started engaging with AssessTech. We knew it was going to be an uphill struggle, and we do like to put in features. So we've done over 30 support requests, 51 for new features requests, and 32 bugs found. And this is just a case of we're using the system probably slightly different to what everyone else is using. Some of the new features we're still working on, so the customizable role resource tab, this is the incapacity tab, just so you can customize it to have your own information. The development of the check module, as I've said, the incident module as well, so we do currently use it for any investigations we have to do as a depot, but can we increase that to looking at occupational instances? Can we use it for engineering investigations as well, and any other safety notices? The hierarchical management of competencies is a big one for me. User interfaces for key security groups. So at the moment, everyone has the same sort of interface as they log in. Can we map that to have more information if you're a team leader, to have some more data on a global view? Gap analysis capabilities. So as I said, we have 18 competencies for one person. I currently don't have a way of knowing where the gaps are. I know where I am now and when they're expiring, but I don't know where the gaps are in terms of I need to have another 16 people who can do doors, and that's been allocated to a person, so I don't currently have that capability. And then notification capabilities. We do have a lot of notifications in the system which are automatically generated, but can we increase those to more time-based? So if we know a competency is coming up to expiry, it will send a notification based on time-based, instead of there's an intervention on the system itself. So that's me. Thank you. Any questions? If not, I will dive back to my sheet.
Unsurprisingly, there are some questions.
No, it's all about Power BI.
I don't think it is about Power BI, but this one's from Stuart Player. We use ACMS for our engineers, but the waypoints don't really work. Is there a way to develop a separate waypoint section for engineers to cover their different competencies in the conditions? Do you use waypoints?
We use waypoints. We put a lot more information in our conditions. So we use conditions not for weather or anything else. We use it for PPE that's being used, any of the radio comms that are being used, and some of the locations as well. But yeah, no, we do use the waypoints quite heavily.
Can someone give Stuart the mic, please?
Yeah, we were trying to. The number of conditions is also already very long. So if you're a driver or a guard, there's a great big long list. And if we add all the engineers ones in there as well, and again, to, from, location, head code, it's none of that. It is just at the depot. And these are the things I've checked. And I wonder if there was a separate waypoint for the engineering function we could develop that checks off all those. As you say, they have a core competence and lots of little ones in between that need process checked. And those are the things we would like to look at.
Yeah, so Hannah's just said we do have condition types on the system. The trouble is, by the time they get on the app, they're all in one big list. And we need to probably mark those condition types as to whether they're relevant to the role. And we also probably do need to redesign the waypoint screen, or, I mean, having fields that you can't fill in is one thing, but not having the fields that you want is quite another, right? Understood. I think Hannah will be coming to you for some more details, sir. Pip, this is a question from, oh, it just moved. A question from Pete Dempsey. Pip. Oh.
Expert level, right?
Perfect. Annabelle Marks. Do you have a separate system which assigns work to your engineers, stroke fitters, etc.? One that checks competence and then specific skill and then availability? What's your process? Checking whether somebody has done a particular task within a time frame, i.e. doors. How's that checked? Do you just execute a resource once a manager sees that an engineer has done that task?
So at the moment, this is a really labour-intensive process. So we use Equinox is our computerised management system or asset management system. That does have the ability to track competencies. We don't currently feed information from AssessTech to Equinox, and it's done purely on a manager intervention. But we do want to make sure that integration is there. That integration is costly, though, with Equinox that we've got. As I'm sure, you know, most software, thankfully not AssessTech, but most will have like a standard fee for any change that you introduce, and our ones for Equinox are quite high. So it is currently a labour-intensive process, but we want to, if we can make that electronic, and it will save me completely in every audit I have, because that's the biggest question I have.
Yeah, we could do our end.
Good. Just not their end.
No, we can't do their end, no. Another question from Annabelle. In terms of criteria or question banks, they seem to be very specific in engineering and tricky to implement in ACMS. How do you write it generically and then have external task-specific based questions externally? You might need to explain that question.
No, so our criteria is huge. I think we normally have our main ones about 600 lines of criteria.
Annabelle, can you use the mic? Sorry.
Do you just chuck it in and then put NA on stuff that they're not?
For most of them will be, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Which isn't very helpful, is it? We do have, so when it was introduced, we do have it in, so there's some practical elements that we do, and then we'd have question banks, which you can select question bank 1, 2 or 3, or there's a mandatory question bank as well. But most of them will go, if we don't assess it, it'll just be left as NA or blank.
Question from Joe Kilner. How do you export your data to one dashboard overview of bulletins?
So we use Power BI, so all the information is pulled onto it. We use Box, which is like an electronic archive, and Power BI can link into that information and then just display it a lot nicer. But Power BI is...
So you pull a report from ACMS that goes onto Box?
Yeah, so we pull 6 or 7 reports from different systems in AssessTech, and then that's all just manipulated together on Power BI. I've got it on my laptop, so if you want to see me after, I can go through that as well.
Stuart has a question.
Does that happen automatically, putting it into Box, or do you have to put it in there?
It's done automatically. So there's an email associated with all of our folders electronically. So AssessTech just sends all the information to that email and it stores it.
It's the same mechanism you used to use at GWR for your nightly reports for resources. Joe, did you have a further question on that, or are you good? Oh, hang on, Pete said he's answered. Another question from Stuart. Whatever happened to the interactive dashboard that would give you a pictorial view? Like, yeah, Stuart, it didn't go very well is the answer to that. We tried to do something on ACMS. I think we presented it at the last user forum that looked very much like this Power BI. It works. Some people are using them, but as soon as they get at all complicated, they perform really badly. So we've currently stopped them. Apart from some that are already working, we've currently stopped making new ones. And we are looking for a better answer to that. And Power BI is a good answer, actually. So if your company has a license for Power BI, getting us to write some reports that will feed to it, the way we've done for PIP, that's all part of the service, and that's a very good answer, actually. But there are other reporting mechanisms other than Power BI. I'm not selling Power BI, but so whatever you've got, let us know, and we'll try and work with you. Do you have Power BI SWR? Yes. Yeah. So that's your answer, in fact. I have a question here from Abu Wazim Ansari, which I don't think is for you, actually, Pip.
Even better.
How ACMS manages scoring based on assessment outcomes, as assessments do include both objective or practical-based subjective assessments. I did see this one earlier, Abu. I'm afraid I don't really understand the question. The assessors mark the criteria red, amber, and green. Kurt, can you help? I know he's online, but no. Abu, if you could write a longer question, we'll try and answer it for you in a minute. Thank you. Okay. Are there any more questions from the floor for Pip? No. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant.